Okay, so Moses is facing Pharaoh again.
Well, first of all, God tells Moses, and the language here is important. Heshkem baboker. Heshkem means get up in the morning. But actually, get up in the morning. The very word Heshkem, the root word in Hebrew, is Shechem, which is the city of the Levites that the Levites destroyed, and that I've mentioned before, that they circumcised themselves in order to be a part of Israel, and then they were slaughtered in their circumcision. So there's a reference already. Get up in the morning, Heshkem. In other words, the Levite cunning, which is you're going to exercise against the Pharaoh. Get up and do it. And behold, Pharaoh is coming out of the water. So Moses is pulling a Levitical drama on him, and he's coming out of the water. And what if he's coming out of the water? He's naked and not circumcised. So there is a picture here of Moses coming before the Pharaoh, who is naked, and he's being marauded. He's being intimidated by an 80-year-old fellow, and he's been told, send my people, let my people go, that they should serve me. And here is a basic idea of the right to congregate and the right to ritual, to serve. And the next one that he's demanding is the right to leave for 3 days, to go for a 3-day festival. But he's demanding still the same demand that he had in the very beginning, and that is to go for 3 days to the desert and to serve God, and then to return. So this entire drama is playing out with the intention, at least vis-a-vis the Pharaoh, to leave to worship for 3 days, possibly to circumcise, and then to return back again. And the Pharaoh won't let this happen. And if the Pharaoh does not send the people, allow the people to leave, Hineni, behold, Mashlich becha, I shall send into you, and into your servants, and into your people, and into your houses, and the Hebrew word here is arev. Arev, that is a very interesting word. It has many different meanings. It means to mix. It means the evening also, because the evening is the mix of the light, as the light mixes with the darkness or disappears. It also means the raven. This same very word is the raven, the crow, the same crow that Noah preserves along with a dove and sends out in order to check out the land. And the raven comes backwards and forwards and it cannot land because there's no dry land. And the dove eventually returns. Both of them are homing birds. Both of them are the most intelligent bird species, and both of them demonstrate the ability to cultivate. If you cultivate the pigeon, you have an entire communication system from many thousands of kilometers, and the same with ravens. Ravens also use instruments, the most intelligent of birds. They also are able to, they're attracted to metal, and so they're used by the armies. And their glint in their eyes. It is said that a general knows how to read the glint in the eye of an eagle if there is an army close by, because they can, through triangulation, they can identify the positions of armies. So they were military birds. And in addition, they were used to consume dead corpses. They would fly around corpses and eat, and you would also know if there's dead corpses around. So what is this word? To mix a ambush, a raven. It also means to support, or to. It can mean to ambush. It can mean to hunt. It also can mean to support. It can be the nature of things. So it is very confusing that it should be used here, and the rabbis say that it's a combination of everything, all the creature crawlies. But what it does demonstrate is that Moses is aware of the full cycle of the creatures of nature. In fact, throughout the whole plagues, he has demonstrated, from the crocodiles to the snakes to the fish to the blood to the bacteria to the viruses, and now to the mixtures of different creatures. And if you think about it, who is, according to tradition, said to have written this text? Moses is said to have written this text, and also the text of Genesis, where it describes the order of the creation and the order of the beings and chronologies, and it describes one of the first commands of humankind to conquer nature, or to conquer the creatures, and to administer the creatures, to know their full cycle of their biology, their productivity. And that was what the priests of, certainly of Canaan and the Hittites, the priests that would be involved with the administering of the harvests and the sacrifices, and the firstborn of the of the animals, and of the omers, of the collection of the wheat and the corn of the sheaves. These were collected by the priests, who would be able to both calculate and then infer and derive a lot of information of the entire seasonal bounty from what he received from his sacrifices. And here the Arev, the locust, or the crow, the raven, the guarantee, however one calls it, that very word appears in the story of Noah, and it symbolized the beginning of, or the end of, a world. And the ability for this word to conjugate itself in such a different way from the beginning, from Noah until now, from the end of and the era, from the great flood, from the beginning of a new era, to what seems to be the collapse of the greatest empire of the Nile Delta, and it was going to cover and destroy and bring about travesty. You know, this is epic drama. Moses is bringing all of his potential to the fore in a drama before the Pharaoh, on the Nile, on the most cultivated place of human civilization. The Garden of Eden manifest in hard human labor, in servitude, and in inspiration. And Moses seems to be the author of the entire biblical idea. He is attributed to doing this. So on one hand, you have the great insight of the creational stories, and here you've got the great tragedy of it. And the beast here, the creatures here, are called Arev, and it is so symbolic because Arev means a guarantor on one hand, one is dependent on one person is dependent on another person for there to be the normal nature of things on one hand, and also on the other hand you can have a marauder or a wild or a hunting or a situation where one is under attack, that like a raven surrounding a carcass. So that the symbolism here is in contradistinction, as is Moses standing before the Pharaoh on the banks of the Nile. So the story continues. The crows or the raven or the creatures are called upon Pharaoh, and Pharaoh has enough, and he recognizes he can't manage, and he goes to Moses and to Aaron, and he says, "Go and sacrifice." But he says, "Just go sacrifice close by." He doesn't want them to leave. This is his workforce. This is how his nation became rich, and so he finally lets them go for a few days to serve their God, to have a ritual, and expecting them to come back, and that is the scene which is being developed here. And he says, "Go and sacrifice to your God in this land." And Moses said, "This is not so, not correct. We cannot do that. We cannot stay here to have our festival. We have to go away." And he says, because if we sacrifice here, we will sacrifice the animals of the Egyptians, and for them they are either holy or they're impure, but we can't kill them. Because if we kill them, if we sacrifice animals, they will punish us. Here we see negotiations between Moses and Pharaoh, how to ensure a smooth passage of a large population out of Egypt. Here we see the beginning of negotiations between Pharaoh and Moses on basic human rights. We know that this is what Moses is getting to, because this is what he legislates very soon afterwards. It is on his mind, and he is now negotiating with the Pharaoh the right to congregate, the right to rest, the right to worship, the right to leave and come and go. And it is the beginning of the greatest journey of the human spirit, the journey through under the cloud of law and a column of fire of legislation, and Moses here is pitting himself against the Pharaoh, and this is a struggle that occurs today, and the sages say one should see themselves as if it is happening today. And if one is able to get inspiration from the negotiations that we see that Moses and the whole of Israel are not involved in any military confrontation whatsoever. There is zero military. There is no even rude tones. In fact, Moses meets the Pharaoh in the bathhouse, naked, talking, and he has come with his family, and it is happening in a very diplomatic, in a very noble way, in many ways, and it is through words. So this is really a struggle of ideas which is happening, and that happens today. In fact, that is happening today more than in any other time in history. A great struggle of ideas, the struggle of ideas of the potential for tyranny and the terrible potential for tyranny and the plagues which are imminent in that tyranny, and the potential for great freedom and the wonders and the incredible horizons that can emerge from this freedom. So this is being played out right now, and not only is it being played out on the international scene and in the technology scene, it is being played out in the local scene of the Middle East, where there is great struggle with tyranny in the land that these ideas of liberty were developed, which emerged from, which they were from the Levant to the Nile. There is such tragedy asunder, and the heart of the Pharaoh is indeed heavy and strong, and the ability to change one's mind, to possibly to be given over by negotiations, to actually listen to the Moses in the other side, to see the other side, however much one wants to see oneself as the hero and the protagonist. Maybe one should see themselves also as a bit of a hard-hearted, and the other person as a Moses, as the one demonstrating, as the one, as the one that can be learnt from. So these ideas can be taken down to the very basics, not only for the world but for this region, very much where a change of heart can lead to from one thing to another as the negotiations appear on this very subject. The sages strangely say that Moses was the greatest of all prophets, that his enlightenment was equal to that of the divine. It's a rather unusual thing to say of a monotheistic religion, that he saw God face to face. So what is it that was so special about Moses? One, you see that at least in this critical juncture, he's negotiating. It is a matter of words that he now face to face is negotiating with Pharaoh. Beforehand, his brother Aaron was doing so. That he is articulating a vision of freedom and of freedom of worship and mapping out a divine course for himself and his people. If one would see oneself more as oneself as Moses, but also other people as Moses, that they have their inspiration, they are divinely inspired, that they see face to face with God, that they have their own genesis, that they are masters of their own cycles of life, that they have the abilities to threaten and to establish and to make great works and to make great signs, that everyone is in fact a Moses, and everyone is entitled to their own liberty, or they have liberty, but also that one should send out their people if they want they demand, let my people go, then perhaps the Pharaoh beside them and against them should let their people go, and to be insightful and to be reflective and to be softened of heart and to be circumcised of ears and of lips. That relationship, although here described as deeply political and deeply civilizational, can be personalized on an individual level.